to come. Just a quick history of our bond measure. The San Leandro voters approved Measure N, which was a $198 million bond measure just this past March 2020. Projects that are currently in some form of design stage are a new gym at San Leandro High School, a new continuation school campus for Lincoln. We're looking for a new drop-off and entryway at Roosevelt Elementary School, and new modular buildings at Muir Middle School to replace old portables. At Bancroft Middle School that we're here to look at tonight, we're going to look at student drop-off area, new track and field, including pavement and basketball courts. We're looking at replacing old portables with new modulars, new main entryway to the school, which will be ADA accessible, and new traffic flow within the main hallway for safety. So with that, I want to introduce several people that we have here to talk about all of that. First of all, we have district staff with us tonight. We have Keziah Moss, who is our Director of Community Engagement as Keziah. And we have Aaron Kerrigan, who's our bond director, who's going to be doing most of the presentation tonight. And Aaron, do you want to go ahead and introduce, if you would, the architect and design team?
Yeah, so the design team from IDS, we have Jane Sedodin, Dan Hughes, Muriel Weber, and Decker Flynn are all going to hear. Mostly Jane will go ahead and present tonight and show you her conceptual designs that the team has come up with based upon some suggestions from staff and administrative staff at the site, as well as some of the ideas that we had surrounding the redesign of that entryway and also the positioning of the field, as well as the drop-off area. So with that, I'd like to hand it on over to Jane.
Actually, if I could just real quick, I just wanted to do the introductions there. Let me just one more set of introductions here. I'd like to just recognize some of our governing board members here tonight. The ones that I see in attendance are President Evelyn Gonzalez, Trustee Monique Tate, Trustee Peter Oshinsky, and Trustee Christian Rodriguez. Thank you all for being here. And I also see Valentin Del Rio, the principal of Bancroft. So also somebody who's incredibly important in the process tonight. So with that, let me hand it back to you, Aaron.
Yes, thanks, Kevin. So yeah, Jane, if you would like to go ahead and get started, we're all on pins and needles.
Okay, well, I'm glad I'm so exciting on this rainy night. So welcome everybody. Thank you for coming. And I'm here. I'm actually principal for Integrated Design Studio. We're a site planning landscape architecture firm. And I also have on our team here, Dorman Associates, who's working on interior architecture and changes to the buildings. And Dan Hughes here is a civil engineer on the project. So we're all working together kind of interchangeably on these pieces of the puzzle that we're trying to put together. Before I start, I just want to emphasize that everything we're showing you tonight is conceptual. The whole idea is we've started doing some of the work on it. We've got some design ideas, and we're here because we are not the people that are using the space every day and walking through it and moving in and out and driving and dropping off kids. So we really want to get your input on the best direction to go as we progress in the next level of our design. So I'm going to start tonight. There's 3 things we're going to do. I'm going to start sharing my screen, Kits, yeah, if that's okay. Because sorry, I think I always say your name wrong. So tonight, what we're going to do, can everybody see my screen? Yes, okay.
Yes.
I've learned over the last many months to always ask that question before I get started going too far. So tonight, there's 5 things I have in mind. First, I'm going to do a very brief overview of the site and the project scope, a couple photos just to orient people who may have not been on site that recently. Then we're going to talk about some architecture in the building canopy. We're actually not going to be talking about interior architecture. We'll just be talking about changes to the building canopy tonight. And then we're going to talk about the main entry access design. And then we're going to talk about the student drop off and the field at the basketball courts. So, and we will leave time at the end for questions and comments. We are also going to pause along the way at each of these steps after we present each category to see if there's any questions, because it's a lot of information we're going to be giving out. And I think it'd be easier if we took architectural questions and then entry questions and then field and drop off questions. So to start, the brief overview of the site. So here is, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit on this. I'm actually going to tilt. You're going to look at my ceiling for a moment here, because I can draw while I'm presenting, and it makes it easier for me to do this. So here's the existing aerial of the existing conditions at the school. So the scope when we're looking in the rear is looking at adding a new student drop-off area somewhere. You'll see there's a big red arrow that says existing driveway. That's pointing to where the driveway currently comes in to enter the staff parking. And what we're looking at is several different options for using this area as a student drop-off and pickup. Okay. The other thing we're looking at is redoing the track and the soccer field. So we've looked at a couple different configurations for that we're going to be showing you. We've also are looking at, there's several basketball courts. For those of you who are familiar with the site, there's some over here to the north, and there's actually several existing basketball courts right here that are going to be eliminated by the student drop-off. And so what we've also were trying to do when we went through the concepts is maximizing how to maintain as much basketball as we could while still allowing for the student drop-off. And you'll see that in our designs. The other area that we're focusing on is over to the south, the school main entry. There's a red dashed line around that. And we're going to show you several renderings for improvements to entry. And the focus on that entry will be providing accessibility for wheelchair access into the main entrance and redoing the exterior canopy. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is the order that we're going to do this. Actually, I'm going to pass this over to Decker, and he's going to start talking about things architecturally, like changes that would happen to the actual building. And then I will follow up with some landscape changes and changes for the drop off. So Decker?
Yeah, thanks, Jane. I'm Decker Flynn, architect with Dorman Associates. I think we have Chris Dorman on here as well. He's a principal architect at the firm. I'm going to share my screen to get this going. If I can, there we go. All right, can everybody see my screen? Yes, okay. All right, so this obviously is a existing photograph of the main entry of the school, showing the existing concrete canopy with the freestanding column supporting that and the entryway beyond. And one of the main issues here, you can see from all the steps, but this is not accessible at all, as Jane mentioned. The other issue with accessibility here is these columns that flank each doorway create an inaccessible condition at the doors as well. There's not enough clearance at the pulls of the doors to get the door open. So one of the things we want to do is obviously address that. And then I'm going to show you some ideas about possibly redoing the ideas about how we might improve the entry canopy as well. So this next image is a 3D model of the existing condition, and it's a frontal view showing the doors and the steps up to the entry. We're going to focus on the entry doors first. Here they are zoomed in. This building was built in the 1950s, and you know, it's a bit brutalist building. It's a very you know, noble building, but we need to make this entry accessible. So what we're looking at doing is actually something quite simple, which is removing the intermediate columns that separate the doorways and creating wider doors that make two primary doorways into the main entry lobby of the school. And this will take some engineering to do this, but Luckily, the columns, these columns that we're removing are not primary structure, so our engineer doesn't think it's going to be that difficult to do this. But this is, we have some things in the interior that we're going to modify, but today we're going to focus on what we're doing on the exterior of the entry. So this is this one major change here. We still have the canopy, which you can see the arc of the canopy above here. There's a gap between this entry door and the existing canopy of about 5 or 6 feet. So when you're standing at these doorways, you get rained on. Tonight, you really get wet. It started raining here. So the other thing we're proposing here is to add a new translucent glass canopy over the doorway. And this would be cantilevered off of a new header, concrete header that would be built into the existing entryway portal. I'm going to show you some other images of that. So above this canopy and this new concrete header that it's attached to, you have the original 5-column array that separates the windows of a library, which is on the 2nd floor. So these are a couple of zoomed in views of that glass and steel canopy. And these are some quick rendered views of what it looks like when you're standing next to the doorway looking up. So this is actually pretty simple glass and steel canopy. It would let light down into the entryway. So we considered a steel solid canopy, but we feel that a glass canopy would be much more gracious and allow, as I said, light to illuminate the entryway. So I'm going to switch now to this front existing canopy here that we have where the sign is mounted. And we did some sketches early on about what we might do to improve this entry canopy. We were trying not to go too far afield, trying to stick with really what the building has to offer as far as architecture. So we did some sketches. First sketch idea, we're showing the new doorways here beyond, but this idea is very simple, which is leaves the existing concrete canopy as it stands, and to simply add a new metal sign band attached to the front edge of it. So looking at the existing again, you know, the existing canopy is really just a concrete slab. We're proposing to add a new sign band that would be mounted to the front of the columns that would allow us to put school signage there. We could put active signage on this band. And actually, Jane will have some renderings that show some ideas about that. Some other ideas we had, we looked at shortening the canopy, truncating it. There's some issues with the canopy structure. And quite honestly, we didn't feel that this was very compelling. There's another idea about kind of a portal, concrete portal. We weren't that excited about this one either. But it'd be interesting, you know, if anybody has any comments, obviously, you can give those during comment period. This last idea was looking at removing the canopy completely and introducing the glass and steel canopy. And actually, this idea was essentially added to our preferred scheme, which is this one, which is a simple sign band mounted to the front of the existing canopy with a glass canopy protecting the new entry beyond. So that was a very quick presentation on the architecture of the exterior entry. I don't know if we want to run through this whole thing, Jane, but this is kind of a transition point to where what you guys are looking at.
I think so. So we have some of these. We'll transition back. I'd like Jay, if you could bring up your
Sure.
concepts there. So Jay is going to share his modeling. There's some 3D modeling we've done to give a better sense of what we're proposing. So what you're looking at right now is a rendering, a digital rendering, a model of the existing conditions. And as Decker was saying, the architects went through several different sketch ideas. And so Jay, could you turn on what it looks like to have the new architecture on there? So you can see that's the difference when the wider band is put onto the existing shape, that curvilinear shape. So then now what we wanted to go into, and one of the things we noticed that we got this is the thing that's missing here is some sort of digital announcement board or scrolling marquee or something that allows the school to sort of say, you know, there's an event tonight or what's coming up. So we've also started exploring some of those options. And what we're doing is we're going to show those options along with our landscape concepts. And I'm going to go through 3 ideas for how to improve accessibility, how to improve the overall aesthetic of the entry, and how to incorporate some sort of scrolling marquee. And again, these are sort of like a pick and choose pros and cons to each of them for you guys to think about. And then at the end of that, I'll stop and we'll take comments. Okay, so the first concept is concept 1. And so Jay, can you go to concept 1? Okay,
Yes.
so this is concept 1. And you can see where he has the thing that says scrolling announcement is where the moving announcement boards would be. So concept 1 has, could you go up to the aerial for me, please, Jay? Okay, so the way concept 1 works is that we have entries, the existing stairs stay in place, and the wheelchair access is coming up from the side here or coming up there from a pathway that would go to the parking, coming up over here. And we have some other views that'll show this better, but I just wanted to say one of our goals when we're doing these new entries and adding what are typically ramps is what we like to do is try to find a way to get access without it feeling like a ramp. And so the reason these walkways are so long is that if we stay under 5%, they don't have to have all the guardrails and criteria that to meet an actual ramp. It's just called a sidewalk because it's under 5% slope. Another thing we show in this concept number 1, before we go on to the other views, again, I mentioned the scrolling announcement is down in the planting bed. And we as a design team have mixed feelings about that, but we wanted to show this alternative just to show you that we had thought about it. And let's say, why don't we do this now, Jay? Why don't we go to, I'm going to clear my notes. Let's show the other views, and then I'll talk about some of the pros and cons of this concept. He can spin us around. You can see coming from this side and spinning around to the other side. Okay, and then maybe take us back down to the middle. Okay, so some of the pros of this concept, or the main pro in the world of pro and con that I can say is, this is definitely the simplest plan, probably the least expensive plan. It doesn't rely on a lot of new walls or anything like that. Some of the negatives on it is it's a lot of walkways and makes a long path of travel for anybody in a wheelchair to get up onto the landing where the school doors are. And truthfully, like I said, the scrolling announcements being right there in the planter, we thought sort of detracted from the design. I don't know, Jay, if you could turn those off for a second. You have the ability to do that. Oh, yes. That's fast. Okay, thank you. So you can see sort of that, turning that off, we didn't really like it there. So then we went on to our next concept design. Okay, so concept 2 is here. Now concept 2, what we've done is we're experimenting with the scrolling announcement being a long curvilinear announcement board below the title of the school. And then our plan, let's go to the aerial and you can see I'll walk you through the accessibility plan. And Jay, could you do me a favor? Can you just turn off the palm trees for 1 second and then we'll turn them back on? yeah, it's easier for, I think, everybody to see when the palm trees aren't there. Okay, so for this one, what we've done is we've extended the upper level from the main doors out to give it a little bit more prominence. And then we have a central set of stairs that come down. And then there are also stairs, stairs on the side. But the wheelchair path of travel would still be up around at this 5%. So again, it's the wheelchairs would come in from either direction. The other thing we've included in this concept is a couple benches for seating up at that top level. You'll see them a little more when we spin around. You can see right there, just to sort of when we brought the paving out, and we tried to introduce more planting into this concept. So this is sort of a main central entry with accessibility still coming from the sides. And Jay, you can now, I'll clear my notes and you can take us on your tour. Maybe put the palm trees back on for the tour. So you can see this is over on the, looking from one side. And then the other side. And then back down to the middle. And we'll be able to come back to these when people have questions, if anybody needs a follow-up. I know it's a lot of information. Okay, so for this concept, some of the pros that we saw, we feel like it has a more formal entry feel. It's got more planting. We think it's a better looking entry than concept one. Some of the negatives, the walkways are still fairly long to get around from the side access. And this scrolling marquee works. It seems a little bit, we worry a little bit about it dominating, being almost too much next to right below the name of the school, but we've been playing around with the size of it. So it's our second favorite choice. Our third is coming up. Okay. So now we'll move on to concept 3. Okay, now, so concept 3, in terms of the marquee, has 2 split announcement areas, one to the right and one to the left of the school, still maintaining the architectural curve and the architectural proportions of what Decker was showing earlier. Maybe now let's go up to the aerial. Jay and I can explain more about this concept. Okay, and let's again turn off the palm trees just for this part, because I think it's probably easier for everybody to see. Okay, so in this one, we abandoned the idea of the long walkways that you had seen over to the side in the other concepts. And instead, what we've done is we've worked with the grades so that the wheelchair accessibility comes up from the left, crosses over this central landing area, wraps around a planter and goes in. What else is done in this? This introduces, rather than pulling out the whole landing, there's a new central seating area right here. So instead of one big flight of stairs coming down, what we end up with is a shorter set of stairs and another shorter set of stairs right there. In the other concepts, we showed a circular planter in this area, but in that front area. But what we're doing in this one is we're thinking it might be neat. I think this is the school mascot, and that we could do some sort of really cool logo or mascot or something in the paving right at that corner to kind of help identify the school more for somebody who's walking by. So Jay, let's turn on the trees and you can take us on a spin through this one. Okay, let's go spin around the other side. Oh. Okay, and then back to the front again. So you can see. So some pros and cons of this. So I'm, as a design team, this is currently our favorite, although we do see some benefits of concept number 2 also. Mostly our reasoning for that is that we feel it's a more condensed, cleaner design. We feel that the entry, that central landing kind of avoids the long set of steps that you see in concept 2. And that we feel like this marquee provides for the scrolling marquee, but it doesn't sort of overly dominate the name of the school. So we like the way this works with the wheelchair accessibility too, because what it would allow people to do is, Jay, go up to the aerial one more time so I can explain this. It allows somebody who's using a wheelchair to really enter in an integrated way that is very much sort of the same path of travel that other people are taking, which is a big part of the ADA and how people are trying to go with that these days, not have it be like, well, everybody in a wheelchair goes over there. This allows the flow of the pedestrians. My guess is that a lot of people who aren't in wheelchairs are just going to, come and walk up either up from the left and then across or different directions. So for that reason, this was our preferred alternative. Okay, so with that, I will come back on and say hello. And we will take, like I said, I think I'd like to take questions and comments on this portion. And then when we're done with that, we'll move to the rear drop off and field area.
We have a question from Trustee Oshinsky.
It's more of a comment. I like number 3, but my problem is the palm trees. They're going to get damaged, and I would have a problem with that. But a good solution to replace those with is duplicate the trees on the left on that right quadrant where the green area is. Mm-hmm. Then I think it'll be really balanced.
Okay. When you say, can I ask for a clarification on that? When you say damaged, you mean vandalized?
Yes.
Okay.
In one of the panelists is just saying that something I think we've been looking at is with the palm trees there, they do have a good look to them, but they end up blocking the marquee. And if you like the marquee up
Yep.
on the canopy there, it does limit the view of that.
Jay, can you go to street view for a second on this one?
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, it does. I guess it was our hope that the palms would be a solution. We didn't want to have any, we intentionally didn't put any trees in the planters, but I can see how the palms, until they're full grown in particular, would interfere with the view at the marquees. We were hoping because they were palms, the vandalism issue aside, when they were grown, they would be something that the leaves wouldn't block it, but that's a really good point.
And then one of the things that the school staff pointed out is having the marquee down where the logo is on this one, the mascot logo, it would increase visibility, but the potential there for vandalism, just being right on at the street level, kids coming and going, everybody all the high traffic area like that. I think the concern was not a great solution to put the marquee right there at street level.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that. It was sort of an attempt to find something different, and we didn't like where it was before, so.
There's a question regarding skateboard activity. Just to let that person know, TD, that we would use skate stoppers and other methods to keep and prevent them from utilizing it as a grinder.
Yeah, that there's little details like that don't show in the model because it's so time consuming to put it into the model, but definitely we'd be aware of all the skateboarding issues.
And why don't we just go through these real quick? Let's see, another note about not liking the palm trees. Can the side steps be larger for more student flow? On this one, I think if we look at upwards of 1,000 students coming and going, maybe not all through this access, through this point of, but it is a lot of kids coming and going. You want to make that as little of a bottleneck as possible. So maybe talk about that.
So to
maybe remove the palm trees and go up a little bit just so we see all of this.
Well, Jay, go to the side. Jay, go to the side view for 1 second. One of the side views on this one. So you're saying to widen the. Well. So here's a challenge with this. We can't move. This is an interesting one, and we played around with this for a long time. We can't make this the planter here any any wider this, or we won't have the length to get under the 5% for the ramp.
Okay, that makes
So
sense.
the answer to that is we couldn't do it on this side steps. Or we actually could, but we'd have to do we can look at that as a
You have to
design.
look at additional railing or whatnot.
We'd have to kind of do some finagling over there. We could try it. On the other side, it wouldn't be an issue, I don't believe. Jay, can you go to the other side for a second?
It would be asymmetrical if you.
It would be asymmetrical, which is okay. So yeah, this side we could, well, no, we have the same issue here. We're pretty constrained on this. So one thing we could do, we could widen the steps and then this path of travel go to 8%, widen the steps, but then there would be a guardrail, there would be handrails all the way along it. But those can be masked. So maybe that would be something we could look into to see how much. The other thing right now is that the steps are currently aligned with the existing column. So even if we try to widen them by a foot or two, they end up awkwardly, it doesn't help because they would be here and then you wouldn't have enough space for somebody to walk on the other side of the column.
There's no pickup on that, right?
Yeah, you see, it's a little bit, they're both sides are aligned with the columns.
You need to widen it like 3 feet at least.
Yeah, that's it. You'd have to widen it. And maybe what we would do is that would sort of end up, that's how we actually ended up with concept 2, because we ended up coming in and not having this. Go back to 2 for one. Jay, can you go to 2 for 1 second? Because I think it's good for people to understand so this is how we ended up with 2, because I was feeling like the columns were a little bit constraining. And so that's how we ended up with this concept of maybe pulling that upper landing out so that the columns weren't so dominant in the path of travel flow.
And then is putting the canopy higher an option? So do you want to just talk about what that would involve? The existing canopy, I think the comment is about lifting the entire canopy up, perhaps to make the marquee more visible there.
Decker, you want to take that one?
Well, I mean, of course it's possible. We were trying to not spend a ton of money. Yes, we could do that. It would, we would end up with kind of a misalignment of.
You'd have the canopy in the middle of the library window.
Well,
right? The library window, and the library upstairs.
Jay,
looked
can you
out.
go to front view? So we can see what we're talking about. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Actually, Jay, can you go to the scheme one, or not the scrolling announcement one, the one that just shows the straight band, sign band without the active sign below it? Scheme 1 or 3. There we go. The existing canopy, actually, these renderings are a little deceptive. If you look at the height of the doorways in this rendering, let me see, this canopy is actually fairly high up there already. It's a little deceptive in the rendering, but the top of the doors are here. So, you know, the canopy is up about, gosh, 11 feet, 12 feet clear underneath that canopy. And it also nicely aligns with the existing building architecture across the building. I don't know if you guys can see the lines that I'm drawing here, but if you push it up, it would, we would need to do a lot of engineering on that, and we would have to demolish the entire thing and rebuild it. And then the question is, well, if we're going to do that, we probably want to design something else. So
no, I think that's good on that. Just I know we want to just do a quick time check here. I know that we're going to spend a lot of time on the drop off in the field. So let me just quickly run through the rest of the questions here, if we're okay with that. And then we'll move to the next area. I think it's going to be also of great interest. Will there be access to the top of the canopy to clean the new glass canopy? Could get a surprising amount of airborne dirt and dust. And it looks like that would be, you'd be able to bring a ladder in on the side of that new canopy to clean it, to clean that horizontal surface.
Yeah, and we would suggest we'd use fritted glass as well, which helps to minimize the amount of times you need to clean the glass. So you don't see the dirt that's accumulating as much as you normally would with perfectly clear glass. But yes, it would be fully accessible, and you would need to clean it once in a while. But
And then another comment here about the marquee could go on the wall, where I think the marquee currently is above the Bancroft Middle, where the Bancroft Middle School sign is, a little more visible to people in the intersection there. Have you looked at anything there? You have it on the, this looks nice here, but have you looked at putting it above the, again, returning it to above the where it says Bancroft Middle School?
We did. We looked at that and we didn't care for it. So Jay, turn on the existing for a second. In that location is what you're asking?
Yeah, something like
Could go
that.
there.
And that's a possibility.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And why not an ADA ramp down the middle of the center stairway? I think the answer there is you're going to stay under 5%, right? You need too long of a ramp.
Huge amount. If you look, we need this whole length of walkway. So we either have to go from the left and switch all the way across, or we need to have these big, long switchbacks there. Even at 8%, we can't come straight down the center. We would end up out in the intersection over here.
Okay.
Or we would have to have something that looks like a traditional ramp that kind of switches back and forth, just a concrete ramp like that, which is something that we were trying to steer away from.
Right. Let's see, can we see side-by-side views of all options from Monique? I know we're going to make these available to people afterwards.
Yeah. So we can post the PDF set. We don't have the ability with the Zoom and the current way we're doing this to see them all.
To show all of them together. Okay. So sorry about that, Monique. We'll see those. We'll get copies of these. And then if you extend the platform, would it block? Oh yeah, it would block the library windows. That's right. We talked about that. And I think that's it for questions here. Are we ready to move to the next area, Jane?
Yeah, I am. And I just want to say that we're going to be in constant contact with you guys too. So once you post the stuff and everyone has time to digest it, there'll be a PDF showing all the views of all the options available. If people want to send in any more comments, we'll be taking that all in before we move on to the next part of the design.
Great. And as we move on to the next part of the school, I do want to also recognize Brian Azevedo, who's here from City Council. So nice to see City Council and City Council involvement with our design process. So thank you, Brian, for being here tonight.
Hey, thank you. Okay. So we are going to move on to the next part of this. Okay. So for the third part this evening,
Whoops, did you cut out, Jane? I think we lost you. Jane, are you still there?
I am here, but you can't.
Okay. No, we hear you now. Can you? Just going to work through our technical issues here. A lot of systems working all together.
A lot of systems and inclement weather.
It depends on a lot of fiber and a lot of Wi-Fi. Do we know what, Jane, can you tell us what the problem is?
She might be restarting the computer. Let me see if I can get a hold.
Okay.
She's rejoining the meeting.
Is she coming in again? Oh, she never left.
There she is.
Okay,
Great.
perfect.
All right, I'm back. Sorry about that. We're going to continue. I'm going to share. All right, is everybody here? Can you see my screen? Right, we did it. Okay, that's terrifying. That's something that doesn't happen when you sit and there meet with people in person. You just always had to worry that your PowerPoint was going to fail or something. You don't completely lose contact. Okay, so I'm going to be presenting these. I'm also presenting, maybe throwing some comments in, will be Dan Hughes, the civil engineer, because he's been reviewing our design work constantly in terms of these parking and drop-off areas. So similar to the front, I'm going to show 3 different concepts and talk a little bit about the pros and cons of each, and then we'll open it up for comments. I also just want to remind everyone one more time, we're very conceptual on this. These aren't going to be full renderings. These are very diagrammatic drawings because we feel like we really wanted to come to you to get some input before we even got any closer to the next level of design on this. Okay, so coming here to concept number 1. Okay. So what we're showing here is the new concept over the existing aerial. Okay, so it takes a minute to get oriented with that. You can see it's the easier way to show it. So what you're looking at, I'll walk you through the different diagrams on this sheet. So the first thing you'll see on this one is how we've addressed the soccer field. On this particular concept, and not on all of them, we have the soccer field is almost very, very close to the existing location. Okay, it is surrounded by a 300-meter track that is oriented in approximately the same orientation of the existing soccer field. We show, on this plan, we show 7 basketball courts, 5 of them to the north, and then 2 on each side of the track. We recognize that's not ideal, but we're showing it for this one concept because I think I mentioned earlier, we like to show you the concepts that we tried that we didn't think worked out that well, so everyone would have an understanding of how our designs were evolving. The other thing about these basketball courts is they are all shown, the proposed basketball courts are all shown at 42 by 74 standard junior high basketball court size, so they're slightly larger than the courts that are existing. In this plan for the drop-off, okay, so the drop-off would be using this existing entry that comes in. The staff parking entry the staff parking remains the same. Somebody who is dropping off would go to the left, and then there's a pull-out where somebody could pull over and drop and then come back out into the flow of traffic and leave. Okay. Other things that are shown on here, and it's going to be similar for all the diagrams, the buildings shown in purple, the one to the east that has the dashed lines around it, that is the interim architectural location, the interim building location. And then the buildings below are the more permanent building location in the future, but we're showing both. We're going to have a couple conflicts with those in the next 2 concepts, so I'll talk through that. The other thing on this concept and shown on all the concepts is we haven't done any detail work on planting or anything like that yet, but we are thinking that if we're going to have a drop-off or pickup drop-off area, we are trying on all the concepts to propose some green space that would allow having students could sit, some trees, places where they could sit on a bench or something to wait to be picked up. And again, that goes to the functionality of how this all works. You guys may have a different opinion on that, and we are looking very much forward to getting your input. Okay, now let's see, am I missing anything? Concept 1, I think it's good. Concept 1 has a total of 41 parking spaces. You've gained 18 spaces. So there's a net positive of 18. Okay. Concept 2. Concept 2 completely reorients the soccer field. It puts it in a north-south direction. The soccer field, again, is set inside the track. There's a 300-meter track around the soccer field. As you can see, this orientation conflicts with the potential interim building locations. So the construction would have to be phased accordingly during the time that the interim buildings were there, and that would have to be worked out in terms of timing of construction. But we did do this anyway because we feel that this orientation worked better for some other things on the site, in particular the basketball because by rotating the soccer field in this direction, we were able to get 6 basketball courts to the west of the soccer field and some basketball closer to the buildings, which I know is a concern that I had heard about from an earlier workshop. There's also 5 basketball courts shown over in the north. I want to just take a minute to say that we put basketball there because it was there, but if we get some feedback tonight that there's something that's more important to be programmed aside from basketball, then that's definitely something could also be looked at over in that area. Okay. Okay, in terms of the drop off and pickup on this one. Again, we're accessing through the existing driveway. The difference in this plan, the staff parking stays the same, but the difference in this plan is that somebody coming in to go into the parking would take the first sharper left and then go in and park. And somebody coming for a drop off would continue further and then go through a dedicated drop off loop before coming back out. So some of the pros of this, besides the basketball that's closer to the school, one of the pros of this is that we would, by having that dedicated drop-off loop, you have less of a chance of traffic getting really backed up like it could in concept 1. If there's an actual space where people are dropping off and it doesn't clog up around the parking. The difference in parking on this one is there's total parking. Again, it's 41 spaces. So there's a net gain of 18 spaces. And this one has 11 basketball courts as opposed to 8 basketball courts in the previous one. So in this one, if basketball is a really important thing to maintain, this concept works a lot better because there's currently 12 basketball courts and this maintains 11 of them, even with the new drop off being added. So I apologize that things are kind of appearing and disappearing from my screen. Something about my markup program is kind of flickering on and off. So if that's confusing, I apologize. I don't want to troubleshoot it right now. In this one, there is also a green area that we're trying to look for somewhere where we can have some seating and some trees on the hotter days from somebody who's waiting to be dropped off or picked up. Okay. One of the other things that Dan would probably be reminding me to say is that one of the negatives about both of these first 2 plans is that the staff parking is really tight, and this doesn't really do much to improve the staff parking. So we're going to be looking at in concept 3. Look at that. Okay, so concept 3. So concept 3 takes the parking to a whole new level. In this one, you can see the alignment of the soccer field is the same as concept 2. And the basketball to the north is the same as concept 2. So the soccer field and the 300-meter track remain the same. But what we've done is we've given more emphasis to parking, unfortunately, at the loss of basketball. And so that's a tension that we've been going back and forth in on this, trying to figure out what the balance is and what the needs of the school are. When we come in again this time, you'd come in and then go to the left to park at the entryway, and there would be double loaded parking. So we'd actually end up with 50 spaces on site. There would be the dedicated drop-off lane. And then what we suggested on this, since we'd pick up so much parking, if we had double loaded, in other words, an aisleway with parking on both sides, that we would actually propose having in the center of the staff parking area, introducing some sort of island and not trying to have those parking spaces, which would let the other ones be able to get a little bit larger and take a little bit of the clustering in that area out. So in this concept as shown, we have a total of, let me get it right, 8 basketball courts, a net gain of 27 parking spaces. So this is the tension. This is the main tension in the designs that we were looking at. And again, we haven't even started laying out like pathways and connectivity and exactly what the impacts on the park course and everything else are. But one of the things we really want to get some feedback on is one plan provides a lot more parking and the other plan provides a nice cluster of 6 basketball courts in close proximity to the building. So we really actually look forward to getting some more comments and feedback on these 3 ideas. Dan, did you have anything to add?
No, I don't. I think you've covered it all.
Okay, so I'm sharing now, not Jay, so I'm sharing, so I will do my best to navigate and point out, answer any questions.
So let's go ahead and feel free for everybody, all the attendees, to put your questions in the chat, and we'll start going through those. So what your thoughts are and questions are. The first one is, how about some benches by the 5 basketball areas? So they're talking over at the north end with the existing courts.
Yep.
Over by, I think that's that Kerry Lane over there.
Yep.
So that's a possibility. And,
Yep.
and we're talking about both inside and outside of the fence at some point, maybe something going on there, but that would be certainly possible. Some seating over there.
Yes, absolutely. We hadn't paid as much attention to that because we were so focused on kind of deciding like how this parking in this closer proximity to the school is going to work. But I would love to see some kind of pocket green spaces, in particularly where there's a lot of asphalt, where we'd be able to have a bench and a couple trees in several locations.
Mm-hmm. Tricia has a question, which is something that we heard loud and clear from PE staff at Bancroft. PE classes, which was the need for basketball courts, maximizing basketball. PE classes usually take up the entire basketball courts that are now being set to use for parking, which would be utilized in the morning and sometimes in the afternoon. So I think that gets to the tension that you talked about regarding parking versus basketball. Again, what we hear from the teachers there is the need for basketball courts, and they're asking for minimum of groups of 4, which allows a class, 1 PE class at a time. So this design that's up here would allow for 2 PE classes to be playing basketball or basketball type activities with each other.
Concept 2 is the only one we lose one. Only one court with concept 2 compared to the current.
Right, 12 to 11. A question from Fred: why is parking an issue? And you can't quite see it here, but on the west side, the very bottom of the picture, there's an additional off-site parking area next to the gas station there that the district owns. That's parking. It is it increases the parking capacity greatly there. I think the issue is just that it's a little bit cumbersome to go from the parking area. You have 2 signals to go through across the streets there, or a long walk and then an additional signal to get to the main entrance. Let's see, this one has kind of come up again. Could you bring up Valentine to be able to address the parking again, just what the needs are, parking versus basketball, and get Valentine's thoughts on that? So Valentine, I think you're here with us. Would you just address that sort of that tension that we're talking about, basketball versus parking, and what the needs are of the school? Oops. Hey, Valentine, you go ahead and unmute, and just if you could address that real quick.
Just good evening. I'm Valentine Del Rio, principal of Bancroft.
Sorry to surprise you with that. I didn't tell you that I was going to pull you up there, but I'm glad you're not in the bathroom.
So the parking, of course, I think is most important to the teachers, and and of course the community that comes to visit our school when we have parents come to the school. But mostly our teachers are using the parking on a daily basis, and they park along as well as across the street. We have a small parking lot that maybe we have a little bit of overflow, but some also park over on it's the deal side because they go in, their classrooms are on the other side of the school. But they're a big proponent for this style of parking because it does add a lot of extra parking to the needs of our teachers as well as our students. And the PE department is really just student first, student centered. And so I think that's where their opinion comes from.
Perfect. Thank you, Valentine. I appreciate that. And I think that's what we heard the other day about this design sort of winning out. for the needs of, meeting the needs of parking, but also the needs of students, which ultimately is why we're here during the school day. There was another issue here. Neighbors of the school with property adjoining the field have concerns about noise and improper use of the field and courts during non-school hours. Has security of the parking lot and field courts been considered? And that's when, yes, it has. We always are concerned about the proper use of our facilities, maintaining security, and we always want to be good neighbors to everybody. With the parking lot, we currently have the one parking lot open during the, it's not gated or anything like that. We could potentially look at gates on these if that was needed. The ones, and we know that there are sometimes games, we've had people bring in generators to run their own lights and things like that. That's something that we're always working with our own staff with, as well as we've worked with city on in terms of trying to monitor that and stop people from doing that. I think that's also come up on the basketball courts, particularly the far north ones. Excuse me, by Carey Lane, and that's something that we want to think about too during this design process. So yes is the answer. Our survey says there are 4 options. Is that an error? Did we have, Kazai, do you want to talk about that? Is that because we're not doing the internal, or there are 4 options?
No, there was, at one point, I think this form was made, Aaron and I reviewed this at the beginning of the week. I think we shared it with you, Kevin, and it looks as though it's been consolidated down into 2 options. And the staff, they saw 4 options, and the 2 that are not on here were the least popular. So it looks as though we've dropped those from consideration.
Drop those. Okay, perfect.
We had an alternative that we were trying to make work with a different access point and some drop off over on the south side where the existing staff parking is. And I worked with Dan pretty consistently on that. A couple times we tried to, and then we suddenly realized we were fighting something that just safety wise wasn't coming together.
Okay. Could you talk, Aaron, maybe you can take this. When people are coming out of the new parking area or the drop off area, we're going to have to work with the city on an easement to have that additional driveway there. What would we envision that being a right turn only, or could you turn left out of that parking lot, essentially south onto Bancroft?
I believe that is a left-hand turn lane in the center, but I'm not positive, and I can't tell from this photograph. But if it were a left-hand turn lane, then possibly you could, but it's not unlike all of our other sites where we have right turn only. It's certainly like that at the high school, and it's certainly like that at McKinley. I think with flow, you could do signage and help to keep that flow going, because if people are waiting to do cross traffic, it's certainly going to congest it.
It slows it down during drop off, correct?
Yeah, so I think it's a good idea to do that.
Okay. Site plan concept 2 is my preference, more activity space over parking. So activity over parking is what wins in that tension. There's parking across the street, across Bancroft Avenue. Number 2 seems to be a balance of both needs. They are also used by the community all weekend, and that is the case. We know that a number of our facilities, some officially through the rental process, and then sometimes people just using our facilities. Plan 1 is no good. There's no space for PE. I thought the part of the northern end with basketball courts was going to become part of the Creek Education Facility. Are these 2 projects being coordinated? So there is some talk about an area that is owned by the school district, but is outside of the fence there on Carey Lane, being sort of an outdoor learning area. It would be coordinated, yes, but it would not be part of this project. And it's outside of the gate. It's outside of the current asphalt zone.
Is it on the east or the west?
I'm sorry, it's on the north. Well, I said east. I'm sorry, I should say the north section. On the left-hand side, the far left.
Over here?
Yeah, over there, outside the gate. Right. So that's still district property. Okay. There, that flat area, but that's where there's the potential or talk of something down the road. Right. Let's see, basketball courts close to the parking area are heavily used after school by the community. And that's something that we, are aware of, that the need for basketball as a recreation is something that the community wants to see. Areas for gardening is what Alma's comment. And again, I think that goes to the area at the far north-hand side of the left-hand side of this picture with the yellow circle there is what that's talking about. How about an additional crosswalk from the satellite parking area? So if you look at the satellite parking area there, on the southwest corner of that intersection is where the staff parking is. I think that's something that would have to go through.
Right here?
Yeah, I think that's the question. I think that's something that the city would have to look at in terms of traffic flow and engineer. There must be some reason that there's only 2 crosswalks to do it, but that would make it easier to go back and forth there. But there must be some reason for traffic across the road. But that's something that we could bring up when we're working through this process. Pushing basketball to the north impacts neighbors on San Jose. And that's again, something that we are aware of. What this particular design is not adding basketball there. It's keeping basketball in the place where it is. So it's not more, but we are aware of our neighbors there and some of the noise that's generated, particularly in off hours. Is the ramp on the side going to remain there? If so, maybe having only one at the front might work. That's from Felix. I'm not sure if that's, maybe we'll get some more information from that one. That might be a comment back to the front, the start, the main entrance. There are fences that were recently installed. What will happen with those? Yeah, good question from Tricia. Some of those, the panels could be reused, but some of the, we'd have to look at the placement of security fence and how the whole entrance and egress works with these. Again, these are just sort of conceptual drawings. It's not drawn out exactly. We still want to maintain security for the campuses. So there may be additional fencing that goes in, and with that fencing staying mainly in place. Can we add lights to the basketball courts and to the track? That's a good question. I think there would be, some people would really like that. I think the neighbors would not like that. But that's something that we could look at through the design process. And there's certainly, when we talk about tensions through the design process, that would be an example of it. Prioritizing a sports area for use by students and community members should be made over parking, in my opinion. People who will turn left to leave permitted or not, and it will back up the drop off. And that's when we have to look at, we're talking about when we're leaving, people leaving the parking area onto Bancroft, which way traffic flows, and we want to make sure that that happens safely. I like plan 2. I like the way the basketball courts are, and that's this one here. I'm concerned about what this will do to traffic. People are going to need to turn left out of the parking drop-off area. If they're forced to turn right, they maybe will end up doing U-turns in the middle of Bancroft. And that's something that we want to look at. Part of what this would do is spread out traffic flow a little more. Right now, there's the way without this, we know what traffic is like. The traffic is significant in this area, especially during pickup and drop off. That's one that we need to look at as we get farther down into the design process and look at what works there, what works safely for both the traffic as well as for people exiting the school. When the track and field were originally installed, there was an agreement that there would not be lights on the field or courts. And that's good to know about. Thank you, TD. I agree with Mitch. If you spend time on the high school drop-off, it is very congested. People do not follow the road rules. Yeah, and that's one that we know about. Also, I think is going to result in backed up traffic from every direction, north, south, east, and west, attempting to turn in for the drop-off. It seems to get backed up at the high school. I agree. In baseball, does this eliminate baseball? That's a good question. That was also one of the comments. Baseball, right now, I believe that we have 3 backstops on the current field. You can kind of see the outline for it. If you want to talk this particular design, you can see 1, 2, 3 backstops. Baseball backstops were one of the items that the PE staff brought up. That's kind of, again, one of those design elements. It's a smaller field in the new design. It looked to me like, Jane, there's only 2 that you would probably be able to put in
Yes.
in both of the end zones?
We do lose the third backstop.
Yeah, and there's just not a good solution around that. Okay.
Not without digging into basketball. You know, you can kind of see by the shape of things right there that we're limited. It's a very strange shape of an area. We tried everything we could to push that track as far north as we could, you know, to try to clear space for something else, but there's a certain amount, it just doesn't fit any further north, so.
Right, it is just a strange shaped parcel. And I think everybody knows that the parcel, the reason it's shaped is because of San Leandro Creek that is on the north side there, that just makes it a funny shape to it.
We did try one concept also that we didn't think was worth bringing to everybody, that had the basketball court rotated 90 degrees, not the basketball, the track rotated 90 degrees from where it is right now, but that didn't allow us to get the drop-off loop for the drop-off, and it would have just been a parking lot, which wouldn't have solved the drop-off issue.
Doesn't get what we're looking for. Okay. Well, with this, I want to thank everybody. Do we have any other last minute? We're just about at it. We are out of time here. We've gone a little bit over. Any last minute?
Kevin, I'm seeing a question in the chat from Mitch about whether this could wait until the interim architecture is done being used.
He's talking about phasing it with the track interfering with the
It
architecture.
would have to be phased for sure. So we would do a portion of the work as much as we could over the summer or prior to summer, and then do the other part of the work once the construction of the modulars is complete. Then we would go ahead and do the track more than likely.
I think one of the big focuses for us is going to be figuring out how PE, which, you know, classrooms still exist in some way, shape, or form during the construction. So that's going to be a part of that discussion about how it gets phased, hopefully, so that PE still has some sort of facility outside of the gym.
Can I throw out one more question? Not to answer tonight, but maybe that anyone who has any feedback could do it. I'm interested in this, you know, the future potential nature area or something. If there's anything else that's sort of kind of that we wouldn't pick up on, that's sort of a small thing, but something that would be relevant to the PE classes and out in this field area, we'd be very open to feedback on it so we can make sure that it's incorporated.
Absolutely. Yep. And I think maybe another meeting, once we're a little closer, another meeting with the PE staff would be really good for that. They're extremely helpful.
Yeah, we'll get the next level of this. We'll, now that we sort of know the direction people want us to go, we'll be getting this one catching up with the level of design that's been done in the front, really looking at trees and benches and seating and how it all feels moving together and stuff like that. So we'll be bringing that back to everybody.
Great. Keziah, do you want to, let's see, wrap this up with directions for what we're asking for now?
Yeah, sure. I've dropped in the chat several times the feedback form where we're asking everyone to put the information that they either didn't get answered in this meeting or feedback that we need to have. This will be open for several weeks. We're going to also post the recording of this meeting and the conceptuals on the Bancroft website, and it'll be available on the district website too. So, and then like Jane says, we'll be coming back to you with more renderings when those are available as we get closer to breaking ground on the project.
Okay.
Great. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for spending this rainy Tuesday night with us. We appreciate it. And thank you to
Better than Netflix.
Yeah, better than Netflix. That's right.
Live.
And thank you to the whole design team for your efforts. This is great work. Things look fantastic. So
thank you
so
to our
much.
translators too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night,
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Night.